Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace be upon you. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the Deputy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, welcoming you to today's episode of CAIR on Air, the Muslim Action Hour. Thank you all so much for joining us. A special thank you to our listeners on American Muslim 360. I'm here today with my co-host, Hiba Rahim, who is the Tampa Bay Regional Coordinator of CAIR-Florida. Assalamu alaikum, Hiba. How are you?
Walaikum salam, Brother Edward. Doing well. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today for this program. I want to briefly talk about the topic and then ask you to elaborate. And I want to start by giving a big thank you to CAIR-Florida for bringing this topic to our attention. So as you all know, recently a film called Borat, subsequent movie film, was released. And this is a sequel to the 2006 film Borat starring Sasha Baron Cohen. And this is, in the news largely because of some of the pranks that Sasha Baron Cohen pulled on prominent American leaders, including Rudy Giuliani. But this film caught the attention of many Muslims, and in particular, many Kazakh-Americans and Kazakhs around the world, because it perpetuated bigotry and stereotypes of the Kazakh people. This happened back in 2006, and it's happening again now. And CAIR-Florida has been working on this issue with great attention. So Hiba, tell us a bit more about the film and the problem with it, and then we'll bring on our guest.
Well, Edward, you brought up great points about the insult and the ridicule, and some of the key points that are critical for our viewers to consider is that, in the United States, we really value these concepts of freedom of speech, and we really appreciate even the ability to teasingly poke at one another under the guise of parody or satire. But there comes a point where we draw the line between satire and racism and bigotry, and really it's important to study and understand the effect of these things on minority communities and minority communities that feel vulnerable or are not adequately represented in the media or in society at large. And so I was really taken aback, to be honest, when I got my first call about this issue, and then subsequently it just increased in nature, and I came to understand that this was a very hurtful movie, and not just hurtful in terms of emotionally, but also like mentally a scarring issue to many members of the Kazakh-American community. And with that, I'd like to introduce our guest today. Ms. Gia Noortas is the CEO and founder of the Hollywood Film Academy. She's a film and television producer and was a judge on CBS's The World's Best. She has 20 years of corporate management experience in Central Asia and the United States, and she has really been a fighting force behind this movement to raise awareness about the egregious insults that Borat and Borat 2 have brought to the Kazakh community. Welcome, Gia.
Hello, and Edward, Hiba, thank you so much for your kind introduction. And dear audience, my greetings. Really thrilled about our alliance, about the support that we're getting from you guys, as we are definitely a minority, particularly in the Western world. Yes, so the issue is, I would say to begin with, is the issue is that people don't see the issue with it. People think that, why don't you guys just, laugh at it? Laugh and understand the sarcasm, the fight for democracy that this movie is supposed to be doing, right? But the thing is, it's not really funny to us. I know particular people. I know people who have had actual traumatic experiences, and if you guys are interested, I can share that with you. My personal experience after the movie in 2006 was, well, first of all, entire decade of me answering countless vulgar jokes, just jokes, having to explain that Kazakhstan has nothing to do with it, which is just simply annoying. Not only to just, when I speak amongst just fellow filmmakers, but also when I would attend diplomatic events, which is very, very troublesome.
Gia, let me ask you really quickly, interrupt your thought. How does this conversation even start where people approach you and how do they know?
Yeah. Look, we're obviously very ethnic looking people, and we all have a very strange accent that doesn't really go with our appearances. A lot of us look more Asian, a lot of us look more sort of indigenous, but all in all, we look strange. So usually that question, the question, where you from, comes up pretty quickly in conversations with people. And as soon as that comes up, as soon as we say Kazakhstan, we have to hear. I'll give you an example. The movie came out on 23rd of October. The very next day, I was in Uber, and the Uber driver asked me that very question, where are you from? I said, Kazakhstan. And immediately the conversation went to Borat, obviously. And what was really disturbing is that he was asking me if these horrible traditional fertility dance that was in the movie was actually real tradition in Kazakhstan. He had no idea that it was just fictional. And you guys, when you were talking about the subject before I came in as a guest, you said something very, very important, which is, why is it so damaging to our community in particular? It's because we're underrepresented. Most people don't know who we are, what Kazakhstan is, and how ancient our culture is. Most people don't know that we're indigenous people of Central Asia, for example. And, you know, when Sasha Baron Cohen said, basically, not just perpetuates the stereotype, he actually created a very hurtful stereotype for our people. It actually really does affect every member of our, society. So.
Yeah, I mean, Gia, I think one of the interesting things you note here, and I think this for everyone, I think many people have seen Borat, but if you haven't seen it, Sasha Baron Cohen creates this completely fictional version of Kazakhstan and portrays them as Eastern Europeans, anti-Semitic, sexist, rapist. I mean, portrays all these things as just commonplace things in Kazakh culture. And what's so dangerous about that is that, does Sasha Baron Cohen make fun of people of various religions and ethnicities? Yes, to a point. But the problem is that if you're making fun of or mocking someone who is well known, who's part of a dominant culture or a culture that's well known, there's really not as much harm because everyone knows you're joking and everyone knows that what you're doing is not realistic. But when you mock a culture that is not well known, especially to the American people, you are essentially creating in the minds of viewers reality for them, right? They think that is Kazakhstan. I think many Americans would have no idea that the people of Kazakhstan do not all look like white Europeans, right? That's not, they don't look like Sasha Baron Cohen, to say nothing of all the crazy stuff that he does that is not representative of Kazakh culture. So it's not like he created some fictional country to use. He decided to pick a real country with real people who, as you said, are underrepresented. Can you tell us, G, about some of the actual harm that people experience? I know we talked about sexual harassment, I think, in one of the letters we sent to the Academy Awards. What are some of the actual concrete harms that people experience since the first movie came out?
Well, I could give you a few examples, of course. And I mean, my personal one, after the first movie, for example, my daughter was 7 years old, and she actually had to get into fistfights. Because people wouldn't believe her, they wouldn't believe the country's actual real country. Because back in the day, in 2006, when the first movie came out, people actually really thought it was a fictional country. So that's my personal example, right? My son also, who was at the time 13 years old, of course, was fighting at school as well. So both of them were bullied, but it's obviously slightly different for a girl than it is for a boy, especially my son's a pretty tall kid. So from the examples that I can give you after the release of the second movie, which was a recent experience, a young lady who who just immigrated actually a couple years after the release of the first film. She's a modest. She's Muslim. She's a very modest young girl. At the time, she was 20 years old. When she encountered countless vulgar jokes, etc., etc., she was at some point even reluctant to say that she was from Kazakhstan. So she went through the turmoil of, at first, hiding the fact that she's from Kazakhstan. Then she the love for the country kicked in, and the pride, and she would say to everyone she was from Kazakhstan. And then all these crazy things started to happen to her, harassment, bullying, etc. So after the release of the second movie, her emotional distress, now she's a young mom, she has a young kid who's a little girl. Now she got so emotionally distressed, she got depressed, she stopped sleeping, she stopped eating, she actually had to go to a doctor for help. And the reason is because she's really worried what's going to happen to a little girl.
A lot of this really stems back to what seems to be ethnic humiliation. It is really, there comes a point where, especially young men and women who are growing up as minorities in majority cultures, no longer feel proud to say where they're from or to identify with their homeland or their parents' place of origin. And there's a little clip that I want to show that really highlights this ethnic and cultural erasure, where when you search the word Kazakhstan, suddenly something entirely different comes up. Let's cue that now. And there's no audio to this. Just pay attention to the search results.
So if you search Kazakhstan, this is what comes up. Borat, 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 more Borat.
Exactly. And so what does that say? Gia, tell us about your feelings and tell us about the Kazakh community's feelings when they see something like this.
Well, what you just saw is a proof of ethnic erasure. It's just simple as that. Edward, you said something very important, which I always talk about: whitewashing. The entire cast is European-looking people. So he first whitewashed us. Then, he basically incited the harassment and bullying toward our people. And Sasha Baron Cohen himself actually, when pushed by the media to answer the question why he decided to choose Kazakhstan for his film, he himself said, because not many Americans know about the country. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he essentially said, which proves our point. I mean, why create a stereotype for people that have very little, if not any, representation? I mean, obviously, some professional people who work, in natural resources in Kazakhstan, which Kazakhstan is huge in natural resources, they know. But it's a small amount of people comparatively to a majority of a country not knowing anything about it. And then Sasha Baron Cohen calls it a documentary or mockumentary. I noticed that he removed the word documentary now. I don't know if it's him or Amazon, whoever, but it was referred to, for example, in reality shows as a documentary. So what do you think the audience is going to think? This is why we're getting these questions. Are these fertility dances that are completely vulgar? I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, but it's really not a pleasant experience. And to me, personally, it's extremely painful because I know exactly what I'm going to be dealing with. And that's the reason I started to fight against it. Because to me, I don't understand. In 2020, when, the awakening to the matters of racism, inequality toward all kinds of different minorities is out there and everybody knows about it. How my fellow liberal people, how are they not seeing this whitewashing, racism, xenophobia that is promoted by this very film? These are my feelings, Hiba, to answer your question.
Yeah,
It's important to. Oh, go ahead, Hiba.
I was going to ask you, Edward, where do we draw the line then, from a civil rights perspective between freedom of speech and parody?
Yeah, so I mean, look, the issue here is really not a legal one, obviously. It's not a constitutional issue. Under the law, Sasha Baron Cohen has the right to be as idiotic or racist as he wants to be. The question, though, is should our society embrace that, right? Should Hollywood embrace that? Should major companies like Amazon embrace that? And it's important to note that Borat, the original, was nominated for an Academy Award, and it won a Golden Globe for Best Actor for Sasha Baron Cohen. And at the time, the movie was praised not only for the kind of raunchy comedy, but for the message, which was to expose bigotry in American society. The problem is what Borat, this character, would do is he would go and say something bigoted or racist and then get Americans to agree with him, thus exposing a problem in America. But you can't counter bigotry while engaging in bigotry. The character itself is perpetrating bigotry against the Kazakh people. At the same time, he's supposedly trying to counter bigotry against other people. And Mr. Cohen also has a pattern of this. If you'll notice, some of his most famous characters are kind of these plays on Muslims. So the dictator, a play on stereotypes of Muslims and Muslim dictators. Ali G, this, I guess Muslim European rapper, crazy man. And then Borat, he has this habit of playing characters that twist and use the worst stereotypes about Muslims and other minorities. And you don't really see him doing that with other characters. I'll give you an example. He did another film last year where he was playing a Mossad agent. And as part of it, I showed him in this film briefly, B-roll footage, and he exposed kind of anti-Muslim bigotry in one of the characters he was interviewing. But I'll notice that when he was playing that Mossad agent, he wasn't mocking Israeli culture or Jewish culture. He played that character pretty straight. And so I guess the question becomes for him, why don't you ask yourself, why are you so comfortable perpetrating stereotypes of the Kazakh people, of Muslims? But, you're so eager to counter bigotry against other people. How do you justify those two things? Gia, let me ask you that. So we mentioned the Oscars, the Golden Globes. What exactly is the Kazakh-American Association doing about this? What are the demands you've made among film associations, and why?
We have written official letters to the heads of the Academy of Motion Pictures and Arts, which is the Oscars, Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which is the Golden Globes, Directors Guild of America, DGA Awards, as well as BAFTA, which is British
Academy of Film and Television Awards.
Right, biggest awards in England. We urge them to remove the movie from their respective competitions. And we did that on behalf of ourselves and with your endorsement, and thank you so much for that.
Yes.
I think it's really important for these people to recognize our point of view, to recognize just how much harm this movie has done to a small community, us, because we are extremely vulnerable. We're not protected, like you said, we're not protected by the law. We can't file a suit against the guy. Or the production company in this case, but we have to do something. So if these awards, if these organizations actually recognize the fact that it is in fact like for them to give an award, because actually I just saw an article right before we went online. I saw an article in Verizon saying that his film, this new film, is one of the biggest for the consideration for these respective competitions. And this is really troublesome, because by giving him awards, they are actually essentially siding with incitement of harassment and bullying, racism and xenophobia.
Sure.
Promotion of it. So I really do hope to hear back from them, and hope that they will do the right thing.
Yeah, we hope so as well. And really, it was, CAIR, I'm sure CAIR National and all of our honor and pleasure to support our Kazakh-American brothers and sisters in standing against this bigotry and xenophobia, because you are a vulnerable community. And one of the things I want to ask you about is the response that I received a number of times, even on our Facebook page, from some community members who've asked or alleged that the Kazakh Ministry of Tourism has embraced the second Borat film, whereas in the first time they opposed it. Allegedly, this time they didn't. But I want to read to our audience this statement that was on the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Kazakhstan, where it reads, "Both the people of Kazakhstan and its state symbol are ridiculed for provocative purposes. In fact, the film has a pronounced form of racism and xenophobia. Our citizens are rightly outraged by the blatant racist attacks." And I want to thank you, Gia, for sending this to me when I asked you this question. But tell us a little bit about this tourism industry that has in fact been the one to promote it, and who owns it, and the irony and all that.
Yeah, there's a huge irony in it, because the phrase "very nice" that was adopted supposedly by the industry of tourism in Kazakhstan was created by a white American guy, actually, whom I know, who is a Californian citizen, Californian resident, happened to be married to a Kazakh lady, actually a very nice guy, all in all. However, it is really hard, even if you're an extremely empathetic person, it is really, really hard to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, to truly understand the kind of experience that we are receiving because of these films. You have to be us. And even though he is married to a lovely Kazakh lady, and he has a child with her, and he travels to Kazakhstan a lot, he still is a white American man. So what does he understand about our experiences? What can he understand when children now are refusing? I know actual examples of kids who are refusing to say that they are from Kazakhstan because they're just simply scared. Who can blame them, right? Or I know families that had fallen apart because, let's say a mother, actually, that's a concrete example, a mother sides with a younger girl, and together they don't want to tell anyone that they are from Kazakhstan. They stopped communication with their relatives in Kazakhstan, and the older daughter is opposed to that, and so now their family is completely torn apart. They don't speak to each other. There's plenty of tragic stories actually like that, very dramatic stories. So this guy, the white guy, that is essentially proposed the very nice to be adopted to the tourism, to the very name of our country. What does he know about those type of experiences? That's basically the history of why it was so-called adopted. But really, was it? Because the company who had adopted this actually is a semi-private company. And he just showed the official statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That's the official position of the country.
Gotcha. It's so important to be so well-rounded and understand really just that if we see something, we can't always take it at face value, that there must be so much more to it and behind it. And especially when we study these cases or are presented with these cases, as I'll speak now to the Muslim community, we have to be so sensitive to offenses that are being made against, all people, all minorities, our brothers and sisters from the Kazakh community, whether they're Muslim or not. We have to take that cause upon ourselves and know what our children are watching, know what we're watching, and really have a heightened sensitivity to these, offenses. And just imagine, if this was your culture or your family that was being attacked this way, your children, you talked about the fertility dance twice. It was probably one of the most disgusting parts of the movie. But there are other parts that are just so equally despicable and horrendous to watch. And I guarantee that if you're a parent and you're listening to this, if you haven't seen the movie, chances are very likely that your families may have, because it is the #2 movie right now on all on demand video streaming devices. So this is the #2 one. It was there is a demand for it by the populace, which is unfortunate because they don't understand the effects of all of this on the Kazakh community. And we really need to understand that and be more culturally sensitive to others, even if it's not our direct plight. There is a short clip that I'd like to play, and there is a YouTube video that I know, Gia, you helped produce and others participated in that is called "We Are Not Your Joke." And it represents voices, multiple voices from the Kazakh community. And I recommend that our viewers search for it. This is just 1 minute from that 5-minute clip, but it helps really put a voice, a human voice behind this unfortunate circumstance.
Nationality.
Please use an ounce of common sense and realize that it's a straight out lie.
I would urge to think about how many people will feel lost, frustrated, and unhappy, especially how many women and children will be harassed because of this movie. I ask you to educate yourself and those around you of our beautiful country.
Don't be the reason that the Kazakh children of today will have to explain that this is not who we are.
If this movie used another country, like Mexico or Dominican Republic, do you think it would see a lighter day?
Find a way to culturally critique the US without propagating harmful misinformation about Kazakhstan.
Please do not harass Kazakhs that you know or have just met with the awful depiction of Kazakhs from the films.
So thank you for sharing that. And I think, the idea is just to highlight it's, again, for many Americans, I think, even if they don't say it out loud, they think to themselves, come on, have a sense of humor. It's just a joke. It's not a big deal. That's what's going on in the minds of a lot of people. But I think the point of that video and this conversation is to highlight that maybe it's just a joke for you and to you. But this has real consequences for people, whether it's women being harassed and they tell people in Kazakhstan, whether it's kids being bullied at school and they tell people that they're from Kazakhstan. There are real consequences to this kind of conduct, and it's unnecessary. Sasha Baron Cohen could have just he essentially invented a whole culture, because what he's doing is not representative of Kazakh culture. So we could have just invented a culture in a country and made up a fake name, and I can tell you many Americans probably would have believed him anyway. They wouldn't have realized that the country name he picked out wasn't real, right? So what's done is done. The film is out there, but I think the message now, Gia, is number one, we don't want this film to be either validated or elevated by getting award nominations. And that's a real possibility, number one, because it happened before in 2006. And also due to the pandemic, you have so few films that came out this year that, there's a good chance that movies that may have normally not gotten nominated for awards could end up getting nominated for awards this year, including the Borat sequel. So, Gia, the last question to you is, what for those average people out there, just your average Americans, people in the world, what can we do? What should we be doing, moving forward about this film? Should we just be telling our family members don't watch it? Should we be trying to do events with the Kazakh community to try to educate people? What can we be doing on a personal level to address this issue, to try to undo some of the damage that's been done?
Spread the word. There's this real issue that people like me, the activists, are dealing with. It's shame. I'm being shamed for my fight. Why? Like you actually brought it up just now. When you said people are telling us to shut up and just laugh at it. And the communities that are actually empathetic to our cause, what I would truly ask, what would really help, share this, please. Share, just speak. Don't just quietly sit down there. Please join us. Just even if you share it once or twice. This is an informational world that we live in. If you spread the word, you're actually helping us being heard. That would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Gia, I want to thank you so much for your bravery in doing this. I mean, obviously you are, a filmmaker, you're part of the industry. And so for you to be able to stand up against, a very, a major film studio, a very prominent film star, and stand by what's right is an inspiration to, I think, all of us, and a reminder that we've got to uphold our values no matter what job we're doing, what industry in. I think that's something as Muslims we certainly want to keep in mind, and I'm sure it's something that people, various cultures keep in mind as well. So we thank you for that. And please let us know if there's anything else CAIR can do to support this effort. We will, inshallah, keep spreading the word. And Hibba, a big thank you to you for coordinating and leading this effort for CAIR. May Allah reward you abundantly for your effort. And hopefully we'll get some good news back from the Academy, the DGA, BAFTA, and these other agencies. Let's see them put their money where their mouth is in terms of respect for racial equality and diversity and respect for other cultures. Let's see if they really mean it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching today's episode of CAIR on Air, the Muslim Action Hour. We look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. As always, inshallah, let us know if you have any topic you want us to address. Feel free to email us at info@cair.com, and we'll be happy to consider that as a possible topic. A big thank you to our listeners on American Muslim 360. And we hope everyone has a great weekend. Stay safe. Assalamu alaikum.